So you want to reach out and ask for help for your nonprofit, but you don't know what to say. In this video, I'm going to give you some tips for how to have that conversation. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I teach people how to start nonprofits and also how to raise money from the ground up. If you need help with fundraising, you can join my private community where I provide ongoing encouragement, accountability, and training to help you with your fundraising. If you want to join my private membership, comment join below and I'll send you the link to sign up. In this video, I'm going to share some suggestions for how to approach reaching out to folks when you want money, resources, support, all the things. And this video is inspired by one of my followers, Jackie Thompson of Embracing Hearts. She had this question when I asked my email list what they wanted me to talk about, and this is for you, Jackie. So I'm providing 5 tips for when you want to do outreach to help you figure out what you want to say. The first tip I have for you is to make a connection. So if you're reaching out to somebody, and in most circumstances, you're either calling them on the phone or you're emailing them, try in your greeting to draw some kind of connection with that person. If you can, make sure that somebody who may know them can introduce you all, can provide that first greeting for you. Or if you don't know the person and it's completely cold, then try to make a connection with maybe you all are from the same area, or maybe you serve similar populations, or maybe you do similar type of work. So that requires you though to do a little bit of research about who you're reaching out to. Sometimes people will recommend you just do cold outreach, where you get a list of like 200 people and just send emails and just do it like that. I don't really like that approach. I like a more personalized approach, but just know that if you're more personalized, then it takes more time. If you do the cold outreach where you're just sending the same information to the same people, you're not going to get as much of a response as you would with a personalized approach, but it takes less time. So it's just about what you want to sacrifice or what you want to prioritize, right? But in this situation, you're reaching out to someone, maybe you need help with getting resources, getting in-kind donations, so that's non-cash donations, and you don't know how to break the ice. Well, break the ice by drawing that connection with them. But research that person or research the organization that you're reaching out to, so you have some sense of where you can draw those connections. When you are reaching out for support or trying to figure out who you want to contact, it makes a lot of sense to do what's called a circle of influence activity, where you identify all the circles that you interact with in your personal life, in your social life, and in your professional life. So if you want more success at people saying yes or responding to you, then start with the people who already have some kind of connection to you. Maybe you all went to the same school. That could be grade school, it could be college or grad school. Maybe you all grew up in the same area. Maybe you used to work with the person. Maybe you used to do the exercise class or dance class with the person. Maybe you attended the same church, or maybe your family attended their church. Whatever connection you can draw, try to think about that and use that to break the ice. So in that conversation, you can say, hey, I remember you from here. I hope you're doing well, blah, blah, blah. And this doesn't have to feel like a very formal business partnership. You want to work with that person, but you want to see the person. You want to develop a relationship with the person, which is why you think about where you can make that connection first. My second tip is to be upfront about what you need from that person. So a lot of times people are nervous about asking. So instead of getting to the point of what they need from that person, they'll say a lot of things. And if this is an in-person conversation or a phone conversation, their nervousness will take over and they'll just start saying anything and not be very direct and specific about what they want from that person. My recommendation is, if you're going to reach out to somebody and you know you need something from them, be clear and be specific about that in the beginning. Say, hey, I'm reaching out to you to talk about this, or I'm reaching out to you on behalf for this, on behalf of this organization for this, right? And that helps them understand what the lay of the land is. It helps people understand what they're reading, what they're getting themselves into. Because it's the worst thing when people read a whole email and they get to the end, they're like, that's what you wanted? Or they couldn't figure out what you wanted. It's like, well, what's the point, right? what are you asking me for? Because sometimes people don't even put the ask or aren't very specific because they're afraid to. But my recommendation is, if you know that you're reaching out for a donation of some kind, then say that. For example, sometimes you can go to a local, like your hardware store, and sometimes they have surplus items that they can donate. Or you want to go to a local restaurant because they can donate some food for an event that you're having. Say that. Just know that especially people like that, they're used to getting those requests. So you're actually wasting their time when you're not getting to the point and explaining what you need from them. So say I'm reaching out on behalf of this organization in order to seek donations for blah, blah, blah. Be very specific, and then you can go into more detail in the conversation or in your outreach. The third thing you want to do is acknowledge that person, acknowledge their strengths, acknowledge what they bring to the table, and also share what's in it for them. So what you have to remember is that when people partner with you, it's actually an exchange. So people need a reason to be able to say yes, and it helps for you, first of all, to see them as people. It helps for you to say in that message or to say in your conversation, hey, I noticed that you all have done this, or I noticed that you all have worked on this and it's worked well and people love this in our community. Compliment them. So maybe you want to work with a local small business, right? And you want them to do an ad for a booklet for an event or something like that. Well, you can say, we so appreciate what you've brought to our local community. We know you've been working in our community for the last 10 years and you've been a staple in our community, or something like that. Compliment them. It doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be one sentence, but acknowledge them, acknowledge their value, acknowledge what they bring to the table when you're having this conversation with them. And this could be for getting items. This could be if you want somebody to sponsor you. It could be a conversation that you want to have with the local grant funder. So maybe there's a local foundation and you know, because you've done the research, that they tend to fund certain types of organizations. You can say, thank you for all the work you've done to support organizations like mine that help young children, right? One sentence, that's all that's needed. But you also want to think about, well, what's in it for them, and talk about how partnering with you could be successful for them. And don't do fluff. Like, don't say things like it can make you feel like a greater citizen or make you feel good because you're helping an organization. No, really do an assessment and figure out what is the benefit of this organization working with you. So for example, with sponsorship, they get extra visibility. It helps their brand. It helps their image as they're seen as a strong community force because they're supporting local causes, they're supporting local organizations, and that could be a win-win for them. Or maybe you want to get their employees engaged in some kind of work you're doing or an event. So it's a benefit to your employees. It helps with employee retention. It helps your employees see that there's a benefit to working for a company that supports the local community. That's a real tangible benefit. So think about what's in it for the people on the other end, especially when you're doing things like sponsorship, because you're actually providing a service in sponsorship that they're paying for. Now, when you're asking for donated items, that's a little different because that's not an exchange. They're donating something to you, but it's still an exchange in the sense of you're partnering together, right? Like, you are helping them fulfill something for them. They want to do good in their community. They want to make sure that they support young people or they support young mothers in their community, and their donation will make that possible. Well, you got to tell them that, right? So be clear about what you're asking about and then what's in it for them. And what's in it for them is how it's going to benefit somebody else, especially when you're talking about like a donation or a grant. This is my fourth tip, and this is particularly for email. Keep it short and sweet. Sometimes when people are seeking partnerships or they want to work with somebody, they have these long, drawn out emails and they try to throw all the information in there because they think the more information they have in there, the more willing a person will be to participate or the more informed a person will be. When in most circumstances, they don't read the email and they're actually turned off because the email is too long and too drawn out. And especially if it's a cold email where they don't know you, they haven't heard from you before, there's no real incentive for them to read a really long email, especially when you haven't done what I said before. You haven't gotten to the point. You haven't explained what you needed and what's in it for them. So especially when you're using email, try to keep it short, 3-4 sentences at best. And really the point of what you're doing is saying, can we talk more? I would love to talk to you more about how we can partner to help such and such. Do you have time next Wednesday to talk more? Do you have time in your schedule to talk more? And you can drop a calendar link to make it easy for them. Keep it short and sweet like that. And especially when you're talking about like sponsorship, I like to use the word partnership. So I'm interested in partnering with your company for this. Can we talk next week? And you need to keep it to that, because anything else people are not going to read, right? And you think that putting all this information is going to help them, but a lot of times they're going to ignore it. Now, what you can do is attach a one-pager or put a link. If they want to learn more about you, put a link to your website or put a link to a page that talks about a campaign that you're doing or talks about your event. You can absolutely do that. But the actual body of the email, keep it short and sweet, no more than 3 or 4 sentences. And finally, number 5, this is my favorite piece of advice for you when you're doing outreach, is ask for advice from people. When you want to get in good with an organization, or you're trying to figure out how to get on their radar or have a conversation with them, sometimes the best way to do that is to ask them for advice and ask them for their insight. Because people love to share their experience. They love to be presented as experts. You ask them questions and make them feel like they know something. They like that. It feeds their ego. So you could say, I have some questions and advice about what you think we should do with this. Or I have questions about who we should be talking to if we want to do this, or if we want to raise this, or if we want to grow in this way. We'll love your advice about who we should be speaking with, right? And this is something that's very substantive. Like, you need to use their advice and you need to listen to what they have to say. But often what happens when you take away the pressure of having an ask in a conversation, especially if it's your first conversation, then people are much more open, willing to help you. And a lot of times they'll say at the end, if they're intrigued, how can I help? What do you need me to do? And there's an old saying that I like to tell people. I don't know where I got it from or where I heard it first, but it says, if you ask for money, you're going to get advice. If you ask for advice, you're going to get money. So when you're approaching people and you're not sure like what to say, you're just trying to get on their radar, ask for advice. Ask for a 15-minute call to ask their opinion. Say you're doing research in your local area, trying to understand more about why people give or what motivates people to do something. It all depends on what you're trying to get out of that relationship, but approach it as if you're asking for advice and watch what happens. If you have any other tips for people, make sure you drop them in the comments below, because we're trying to help each other here. This is a community here at Boss on a Budget, and we want to support each other. If you need help with your nonprofit, visit me at www.bossonabudget.com, and there are a lot of resources there for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.